Hi, I'm Stu McMillan. I'm the CEO of Altis and a sprint coach. I've been coaching for about 40 years. I've coached about 80 Olympians to close to 40 Olympic medals. I'm here today to talk to you about sprinting. And I'll be honest, I really struggled with trying to figure out what I was going to talk to you about today. Because as a sprint coach, I want to teach you how to sprint. But here's the thing. You probably can't. If you're like almost everybody else on the planet, you haven't sprinted for a long time. Typically, we kind of stop sprinting when we're about 20. Yeah, we continue to run and jog and move, and maybe we play some tennis and some other sports, but we don't sprint maximally. And that's a problem. Because in my mind, the number one measurement of overall health and vitality is the ability to sprint maximally. But the problem is, we don't do it. There's an old saying, you use it or you lose it. And there's a lot of truth to that saying, isn't it? If we don't sprint, we lose the ability to be able to sprint. The tissues just cannot handle it. And we lose the psychological component. We don't believe we can do it. We don't have the faith and the trust in our tissues to be able to sprint as fast as we can. So we don't do it anymore. So I can't teach you how to sprint here today without first giving you some steps, like an on-ramp of the things that maybe you can incorporate into your training that will maybe eventually allow you to sprint or to run maximally or run faster. So what does that look like? And that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you about. And for me, there's 3 strategies that we can incorporate into our training that will allow us to run a little bit faster and maybe have the confidence to eventually sprint. Number 1, you can see that I'm sitting on a track here today. Don't go to a track. That would be the worst mistake you can make. Do not go to a track and think you're ready to sprint. You're not. Find a hill somewhere and run fast up the hill at a pace in which you're comfortable with. And once you can do that a bunch of times, and as you get faster and faster and faster, you become a little bit more confident. Your tissue has the capacity or builds the capacity to handle a little bit more intensity. And maybe you do that for a few months. That's a really important step, number 1. Find a hill. Don't run on a flat surface. And definitely don't run on a track. Number 2, one of the biggest differences between jogging and jogging slowly and running fast and sprinting is jogging kind of happens behind the center of mass. If I'm moving this way, think about the cycle. It just happens back here. You hit the ground, you recover, the heel comes up behind you, it hits the ground, it recovers, and just everything happens back here. And that's fine, that's very efficient for jogging. You just push, and you push, and you push, and you push. Where sprinting, it's all in front of the center mass, because the thigh has to come up a little bit higher to create a little bit more space and room between the foot and the ground, so you can apply a little bit more force. So you can go a little bit further with each step, and you can run a little bit faster. And of course, it is that increase in force that we don't typically have the capacity to be able to handle. But we can start off with just practicing the coordination pattern. So rather than pushing back, like you're jogging, think about pulling forward. Just pulling the thigh forward, just thinking about running in front of our center mass rather than behind. It's a series of exercises that we call dribbles, which is essentially a truncated sprint. It's just a smaller range of motion. We can still go faster with it. We can still go high frequency. We can still hit the ground pretty hard, or as hard as we can with that range of motion. But because it is a limited range of motion, there's less force and less stress to the tissue. So I really encourage you to start thinking about learning how to do a different coordination pattern. Rather than just jogging, start thinking about running, which happens in front of the center mass. And finally, and for me, the most important of the 3 strategies, start skipping. Skipping is very similar from a coordinative perspective to sprinting. What happens at the ankle and the knee and the hip and the coordination of those 3 joints in skipping is very, very similar to what happens when you're sprinting, which is very dissimilar to what happens when you're jogging and even running. There's a coordination between these 3 joints, a stiffness that is required to handle the forces that you can put into the ground while you're skipping. That looks and feels a lot like sprinting. And here's the great thing with skips. It's very, very, very safe. There's so many different ways we can do it. We can just do basic skips, low amplitude, low intensity, and we're just working on the coordination. We can increase the amplitude, drive the thigh up a little bit harder and higher, and then come into the ground a little bit faster, applying a little bit more force, upwards, by the way, of somewhere close to 3 times body weight, which is much closer to sprinting, which is, for most of us, 3.5, 4, if you're faster, 4.5 times body weight in peak forces. And we can also, than just applying more force, we can do it more frequently. So we can skip with frequency. Again, really, really safely. So rather than going out and just trying to run fast, remember, you probably cannot do that safely. So think about these 3 strategies that you can do. Run up a hill, first and foremost. Number 2, think about moving a coordination pattern from being primarily backside to primarily front side. And number 3, probably most importantly, start skipping. Work skipping into your jogs. Skip every 30 seconds. Skip to warm up for your jogs. Just do a skipping workout. Change the frequency, the amplitude, the power, the force, the distance, all of these different things in which you can manipulate skips. And finally, if you are ready to run fast, just remember, probably in excess of 75 to 80% of your full time doing the workout should be spent warming up. The worst thing that you can do is just leave your house and start to sprint. That is a guaranteed pulled hamstring, pulled calf, torn Achilles, something. We have to warm up. So I think in the next video, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a few athletes through a warm-up. How do we warm up to get ready for a sprinting or a fast running workout? Because remember, sprinting or the ability to maximally run as fast as you can is the ultimate human athletic activity. Thanks for joining us.